Welcome to the Starting Over Podcast. I'm your host, Edward Shelton, aka Dark Logos, and this is the show where we look at the strategies, tactics, and mechanics behind the game of heroclix. Today's episode is going to be a little interesting, mainly because I'm going to be going over just prep stuff, and what I mean is prep stuff is looking at what you're doing before you're going into a tournament. So I'm going to be in Huntsville, Alabama this weekend, and that's why I'm pretty much trying to record bits and pieces. I'm trying to get tonight's Wednesday night. I just got back from doing some salsa, had some fun, taught some people some basic, and that was cool. But wanted to sort of refocus myself back on heroclix. Since the next few days, I'm pretty much shifting into that. So what I'm going to do is just try to give you some stuff to help prep you before you go into a tournament, so that you can perform well at a tournament. And I know we have Origins coming up, and I want those that are going to be ready for what's going on, but also I want you to just have something practically that you can use for your every Saturday tournament or weekend tournament or weekday tournament or whatever. And also if you're deciding to go to a rock. Okay? So I'm going to swig this water real fast. Alright, so let's get started. Alright, first off, what you really want to do is make sure that you know what your team does and what it's doing. Okay, so what I usually do is I sort of have this relaxed method where I start just, I sit in front of a piece of paper or in front of my computer. I just start typing around some of my thoughts about my team. And what ends up happening as I sort of just type stuff about my team, I'll come into some different realizations about my team, like, oh wow, that works, that doesn't work, oh well, what about this, what about these other things, I can do this, oh yeah, I can do that. And so what I'm doing is I'm giving my subconscious a chance to just get rid of all my mental tension. You just letting it go, because what the truth of the matter is most people either don't prepare enough or they over prepare, and some people have a lot of anxiety going into an event, and so they'll try to dump tons of information onto themselves before they get into the event. Well, here's the problem with that, is that if you try to dump a ton of information into yourself, it's cramming. And one thing that real life has taught me is your educational process in school is not really designed to make you smart in most cases. What it's designed to do is to present a metric in which can be measured, that says that you have some level of competency, or that you're able to regurgitate. It's just most education that I've seen from early elementary, preschool, all the way up through graduate level courses is about regurgitation. And usually the higher up in education you go, you're supposed to get more of an application standpoint of seeing how you're going to use it. But really, that's why, like, people say, like, when am I ever going to use algebra, in any sort of real life situation? Well, the truth is you can use algebra in a real life situation. You just have to see how to use algebra in a real life situation. I use my understanding of history, theology, psychology, public speaking all the time in this show. Even my understanding of geography all the time in the show. But did you ever get that sense that you might be learning psychology or even theological precepts and whatnot? Most likely not. Okay, you're listening to me talk, and you're like, oh yeah, like so I do these things and then I relax and I do all this other stuff. So cramming doesn't help you. If you hadn't been studying for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks out, I'm sorry, homie. Like the last minute won't help you. You know, it's too late. One thing I like about my teammate KJ is when we recruited him to Phoenix Nest at Rocktober, he indicated, hey, you know, there were certain situations that he was watching people like trying to rush and go over and over and over their team at the last minute so that they can have this sort of hyper performance at the tournament. And realistically, if you look at a lot of people that perform well at that Rocktober, they didn't just like cram all their stuff in at the last minute. You can start to see those people that were practicing weeks and months out to win it. Guess what? They already knew what they were doing, so they're more relaxing. Okay, so the over prepared people, I'm sorry, your bad habits from school and schooling has taught you the wrong way to process. Like I try to say, like, hey, when we build our team, it should be a natural extension of ourselves. Okay, you're not a slave to the meta, or a rabbinic phrase is, Sabbath was made for man, not man made for the Sabbath. Okay, so when you understand that you're not a slave to what's popular, okay, you're not a slave to what's popular. You can create something else that works with your personality. It may be more difficult, okay, but then you can have a natural extension through it. And what I find is those that innovate the meta end up finding things that are a natural extension of their personality. And then people, because they don't know who they are as a player, let alone who they are as a person, end up latching onto it because the model of success is given and we all want to be quote unquote successful versus being the best of who we are. Okay? So let's go to the underprepared person. Underprepared person, guess what you're doing? You don't know what you're going to do. Okay? You're like, I build this team. This team has won before, it does really well. I've seen, either locally or somebody else played this team in the past. This is good stuff. So then what ends up happening is you get to the event, you're really relaxed, and then you go into your first round, and then you're looking across the board, and you're like, okay, I know what that does, but you don't know what your first move is. You don't know what your first move is. And from that point, you're making confused decisions because, in part, you don't have a game plan for how your figures are moving across the map, but at the other end, you don't know how you're properly going to engage with your opponent, so that if you're looking at the map, and even if you have an inkling of what they're doing, you don't know what your proper answer is. Now, does that mean that you're going to face every little, minor or major alteration of teams in your play testing leading in? No. But if you understand that this is primarily a range team, your team is primarily a range team, and you don't have a melee option, then you need to know what your setup distance is. Okay? If you don't have a setup distance, then that's a problem. If you have a team that's based off of high mobility and you don't know your approach vectors, I'm sorry, you're not ready for a tournament. So when we start looking at those two mindsets, I would say about 50 to 65% of the player base is in one of the two. Okay? Now, you have outliers. Okay? And there's some very popular outliers that I want to bring up. Okay, so you have, and some folks be like, shots fired, and it's not shots fired. I know Aaron. So you have Aaron Cantu School of Thought, and you'll listen to him on 2 Clicks from Chaos for shout outs to that show. And Aaron will build teams like the day before and then just go over stuff and then play them and do well. And some people will say, like, but Aaron Cantu just, doesn't prep, long periods of time. He just builds teams and plays. But if you really go into the nature of Aaron Cantu as a player, and if you listen to him on his show, he just sits around and builds teams. So there's different ways of using it. If you're a male, dynamic image vision, and there are gender differences in how we perceive objects spatially. Okay, it's just science. All right. And if you're a female listener, then you have to look at, it's easier to look at your figures in a relational set point, how they interact with each other. Okay, so team building to an extent is easier from a relational standpoint, and then you're imagining how it runs as a spatial standpoint. Okay, so both are needed. You can't look at team building as purely spatial or purely relational. You have to have both. Okay. Now, when I mean spatial is how this operates on the board. How I mean relational is how those figures operate with each other and with other teams. Okay. So that makes it real simple. All right. So Aaron Cantu spends a lot of time building teams, fun teams, technical teams. He'll build and then play something that he really, really wants to play at a local tournament. He'll gather a lot of internal experiences, and then that start reflecting back in his next round of team building. So while Aaron might not play the same 2 or 3 teams, over and over and over again, or variations thereof, what he does is he has a general sense of how he likes to play, in the breadth and width in which he likes to play, and things that he likes to do. So what you see with him playing something is a lot of years of experience of very deep-rooted, very well-established concepts that are applied. Whether it doesn't matter what the map does, and it really doesn't matter too much what the team does. If he knows what those figures do and he knows what those concepts are, he's able to take something and then go out and play. Okay. Then you take, I would say this. There are people, and because I don't have a direct example for this next one, for the other extreme, there's people that will get teams last minute or get teams, and they'll spend a lot of time just going over and tweaking and tweaking and tweaking, and checklisting to make sure that everything is gone through and it's completely done. Actually, I'll take that back. I do know one person, Jake Williams, when he was playing Jittery. Jittery's mindset was, until I have a 99% win, I'm not done. But he'll keep going through scenarios up until the point where it's time to sign up, and then after that he's relaxed because he has to get have energy for the entire tournament, and he knows just focusing on did I think of every contingency is that's just going to drain him. All right, now take this in when I say this. All right, just take it in when I say this. Those two extremes of those personality quirks are most likely not you. And I'm betting even with both of those two extremes, if I bought them slightly towards the center on both, that their results would improve a bit. Okay. Now, I'm not saying fully make, Aaron Cantu this, grind out meta lab guy, or do I, or even at the same time, make, Jittery, just a little bit more relaxed. But if you listen or even pay attention to both their personalities, they're very, even balanced. They're not unstable people. Okay, so what you can see is just, hey, this might just be a personality expression. And so that's what I want you to understand. If you take one perspective of the other, you're not right or wrong. But having these deeper looks at how we're thinking and why we're thinking is essential. Okay, so let's keep going. Get your team together the night before. I've had so many problems with local tournaments in which I don't get my team together the night before, and I run out the house and I get to the venue and I see I left so and so figure at home, and or I get to work and I remember, oh, I left my Phoenix Force at home. Now I'm typing on Facebook, can I borrow a Phoenix Force from somebody, please? Please give me a Phoenix Force. And then someone comes up and they might have a partial Phoenix Force, and I might need everything. So now I have to make additional adjustments in my head, and the team won't work smoothly. Getting your figures out the night before is just is a point of organization. Just plain and simple. It's just a point of organization. If you can't do that, you're going to have a lot of complicated problems, definitely at major tournaments. If you're rooming with a bunch of guys and there's heroclix everywhere, and you're in a hotel that's nearby and it's 30 minutes before round starts, and you're looking for pieces, I'm sorry, you're probably going to end up in a really, really bad situation. Okay, so I always recommend people get your stuff lined up the night before, put it in your tackle box, in your case, whatever you're using, so that it's all nice and ready. Make sure what I do is I put figures on top of cards so that I know I have the figure and I have the card, and I put everything in at once, so that if once I get to the venue, if I'm like, I shuffled through my cards, I don't see the cards, I already know the cards are in my Tupperware. So I just have to look through my Tupperware and oh, there's my card. Okay, cool, I'm good to go. If I needed to do more than that, then there's an issue. And why do I say this? Because I've experienced going to venues, not having everything, and then you're like, oh, HC Realms, this is what the power does. And some venues allow that and some venues don't. And in the venues that don't allow that, you either can't play the figure or use a special power. So now you're at a whole new disadvantage. So what I really just want to point out, with the organization, is making sure you have your dice, making sure oh, do you need 2 ultra heavies? Do you have 2 ultra heavies in your storage? A lot of people don't even have that. Okay, so there's problems that occur just from not being organized. If you go to a major event and you're more on the trader end than the player end, then make sure that you have all your trade bait and all their cards together. Make sure, then this is really important, that everything is, contained safely. There's a good reason to keep those little plastic containers that come with gravity feed figures, is that when you're going to do your trades, if you have your figures that you're traveling inside of those little gravity feed things, it makes sure that as you're traveling they don't get broken, because something can be really great when you packed it, and then when you get to the venue it could be broken, destroyed, glue comes undone, something's off base or whatever, and that can affect your trade value greatly. So definitely be mindful of packing things. Definitely, for me, I bring water, and I'll go into that in just a second. And so, whenever I do trade, which is very rarely, because I'm an eBay guy, and also a minor hoarder, which I'm trying to fix. When I do trade, I try to make sure that everything that I am trading is, well packaged. When I sell stuff on eBay, I definitely make sure stuff is well packaged. But definitely when I'm trading, I'm trying to make sure things are well packaged. All right, so let's sort of step forward into the water situation. I've brought this up before about having people prepared for major tournaments, whether you're going to Rocktober or Origins or your first rock, you want to have a jug of water. And the main reason you want to have a jug of water is that your brain is mostly water and you need to hydrate. Caffeine is great, but sleep is better. And caffeine dehydrates you. And whenever I see a bunch of guys drinking Mountain Dew or Coke or whatever else, Red Bull, I'm like, good for you, homie. You're giving me more an edge every little sip you drink. And I know some people will say, but caffeine will open up the neural pathways. It does this, that, and the other. And it does. It does open up neural pathways. But also, depending on your caffeine use, as it opens up those neural pathways, it's an artificial opening. So that means as long as that chemical is pumping, those pathways are open. They're trained to open due to the chemical reaction. If that chemical reaction is not there, those pathways are not open. So slowly and naturally opening those pathways, okay, consciously, whether through, and I'm not a hippie. I'm really not a hippie when I bring all this stuff up. Some of the mindfulness and meditation exercises, and I don't mean like transmit, like imagine that you're in a field or that you're seeing something far off, but just sitting down and breathing, just breathing through your nose, exhaling through your mouth for a minute or two. Those things help a lot in opening up those mental pathways. For those that vape or smoke, really the majority of the things that open you up, that allows you to sort of get that rush from your nicotine is really your oxygen intake that you're taking in from your breath. Taking in that deep breath is actually the most amount of oxygen your body is taking in. And I would actually encourage anybody that smokes or vapes, for one day. And I know for some of you all, for nicotine, you're going to be crazy. You're going to go crazy, but just bear with me. For one day, take a pencil or a pen, preferably. And when you feel like you need to smoke, grab a pencil or a pen, put it in your mouth, bite down on it, do the things that you normally would do, and then take deep breaths, double the amount of breaths that you would take, and see how your body starts to come down. And then that's a really big deal. A lot of internal stress that we build up out of anxiety, fear, thinking that, if I don't win this heroclix game, someone's going to come and take my wife and kids and my job and my property, and then I will be, penniless and homeless and at the whims of the wolves running around. It's not that, but the way our species is, we process any, anxiety and threat in that same way. Like everything's at stake, because classically in our species' existence, that's how it was. Is that the way it is always now? No. Can those situations occur? Yes. I'm not delusional. But what I want you to understand is a game of heroclix, having that tension is going to be a problem. So, the deep breath, drinking water, keeps you hydrated so that you're able to think properly. It's going to give you an edge over the average player. Now, is there more things that you can do, like a sugar protein, combination? Yes. But there's also like medical and there's medical advantages and disadvantages of doing that, depending on your body type and ethnicity. I know for me, the most deadliest concoction that I put together, and I mean deadly in the terms of that it threatened my health, was caffeine, a protein, a heavy protein, and a sugar. Because sugar is a carrier, and so that's one thing why you're able to attach tons of different things to sugar and have it be effective. And same thing with fat. Fat can also be a carrier. But the main thing is that it went through my body real fast. The sugar, the caffeine, and the protein, to the point where it made my heart race. It was that efficient. I'm sitting there in class after drinking, what was it? One of those Starbucks Frappuccino things, a power bar, and a candy bar. And if you break it down, that's a lot of protein, a lot of sugar. And my heart was like, bzzz, and I wouldn't recommend it for anybody. That's bad for your health. But what we do is we compound our health problems by sitting down for prolonged periods of time. So like the average period of time a human should sit is 30 minutes. And then after 30 minutes you should stand up. This is again why I'm like, your standard way of doing education has made you set up and view things wrong. Like lecturing isn't bad, but lecturing with activities is essential. One main reason you all are able, a lot of people are able to pay attention to the show for the length is that people pause the show and come back to the show. That's natural. You should be able to focus 5, 10, 15 minutes at a time. And you're like, oh, too much, pause, go get your drink or whatever because your butt hurts because you're listening to me, and then come back, unpause, listen for a period of time, pause, process what's being said, and then go on. But, like I said, the things get harder and more complicated if you sit down. You're not getting a full circulatory effect through your legs. And so that can start messing with your chest and with your heart the longer that you sit. So, like, for example, every hour that you sit, it takes away minutes, several minutes off of your lifespan. So like, and I mean it's excessive sitting, not just like I get up and I sat down for an hour, like, oh wow, I'm my life is shorter. No, it's like if you sit down for an hour and don't move, that stationary effect is wearing down on your heart. You compound it even more for longer stints of you sitting down. So if you have a job in which you're sitting down 2 to 3 hours at a time, it's better for you health-wise to get up and move every 30 to 45 minutes for 3 to 5 minutes, whether that's stretching, rotating your neck or whatever, and as long as you're getting out of your seat so that your heart is properly pumping blood. Okay, but in our game we primarily sit down just because of politeness. And also space, because if a lot of people are just standing up, some people can't stand up that stand up that long, as well as just leaning in. That has different effects on your back and whatever versus just standing up normal, because that's just how we are. We'll lean in just for reach purposes and whatever else. But just standing up every 15 to 20 minutes, you might think it's unproductive, but in actuality, it saves your lifespan, and it allows you to be a lot more healthy. But anyway, like I said, people will go out to the tournament and then they'll eat super, super greasy food, and that's fine. But at lunch, you haven't done anything between breakfast and lunch to metabolize all that fat, okay, that you're taking in at lunch. You haven't done jack, okay? So your body isn't burning that energy. You're just stacking it on to your tire gut, okay? And if you like tire gut, that's fine. But here's the problem that kicks in. After lunch, because you ate the huge greasy burger and pizza, you even talked about, Aaron Cantu joked about meat sweats in the last episode of 2 Clicks from KO. But because your body isn't metabolizing it, the only thing they can do is turn it into fat. And that process, depending on how much weight you have, can be, a little strenuous. So because it's a strenuous process of your body turning that protein, instead of being active, in rebuilding muscle, because usually when our species eats meat, it's because we just ran something down, not that it's domesticated. So that your body's design, main process of dealing with and eating meat is that it's repairing the muscle fibers that are broken down so that they can be built stronger, so you can kill more stuff and get more meat in the future. All right, but you're not designed just to eat meat or a lot of proteins and then sit. So what'll happen is your body has to convert the protein from what it is into something else, which is fat. And it's like, well, we can't use it to build stuff. Well, it'll power us later. And that's why your stomach is going into overdrive. That's why you're feeling sleepy. If you start feeling sleepy, then guess what? Your cognitive function goes down. If your cognitive function goes down, what do? You go get a pop or a sugar or something other to up you, okay, to give you an upper. All right. And then this upper is supposed to last you through the natural process of your body breaking this compound protein into fat. And then after all said and done, you have the negative effects from the downer from the sugar, the downer from the caffeine, and the dehydration from the caffeine if you consume those things. And now you have to compensate for it. So that's why water is important. Okay. Not only that, there's some things I learned, like in Rocktober in particular, is that the Atlanta water is hella chlorinated. Hella chlorinated, okay? I call it negative water. It takes more out of you to drink it than it does put in you. So because of that, like having bottled water, like not like the little bottles of water, get yourself a man jug. If you notice that the water, you taste the water is heavily chlorinated, go find a grocery store and get yourself 2 gallons of water. Get one for you, one for your friend. If it's a 1-day tournament, if it's a 2-day tournament or a multiple day tournament, just make sure that you have enough, to fill up throughout, the day. So so you have it. And the main reason I'm really pointing this out is at Rocktober is the first time that I went to a venue where my water jug was a curse. I really mean that. Like I'm drinking water and my throat is staying dry. Okay, and I'm thinking like, what's going on? And then I'm just sitting back. I'm like, it's the water. Like that's the only thing. I'm going to the bathroom like a racehorse. So not only am I not getting what I need out of the water because of the chlorine, but also I'm dehydrating myself more because I'm urinating frequently. Because and so this process altogether, I'm like, how can someone be healthy down here? But that's a different story. So if you start noticing like, hey, you get to the hotel, you taste the water, it's like, oh gosh, this is hyperchlorinated. You definitely want to find a grocery store or Walgreens or something and get some purified water, not distilled water or any other stuff. Just get some purified water in a gallon jug, so that you can carry that around the tournament. There's nobody at any event that I've been to, whether it's Rock or Origins or Gen Con or any of that stuff, that's going to hate on you for bringing in outside food and outside water or outside drink. Like there's never been a place that I've known that's been like, blah, you can't bring that here. Okay, so there you go. So since I'm on food, I'll just tell you honestly, you want to have like simple sugars. You don't want to have super complex sugars. You want to have basic food, fruits, vegetables. You can have a protein like, sandwich or something like that. That's fine. As long as you keep it cool in your cooler and you're up on that, then cool. I wouldn't tell you go eat the burrito grande or eat a steak, because again, your body hasn't done anything technically to earn that. You're not pushing, lifting, walking for long periods of time. All that's going to happen is that your body is going to slow you down, and then turn it all into fat. It's not going to turn any of it into muscles. That's one thing I learned from dancing, is dancing burns a lot of fat, doesn't build a lot of muscle. So like the days that I don't dance, I go and do my free weights and build up muscle. I do more extraneous, movements at work to build up muscle. It's not a ton, but it builds up muscle so that like when I eat all this stuff, like I'll eat like a rotisserie chicken at work, and that's like my main protein, is like rotisserie chicken. But in doing that, like I've noticed that my frame has become a lot more refined. I haven't gotten swole, like I haven't gotten big swole, but my practical strength has gotten better, because when I eat during lunch, it means like, hey, I've actually worked and moved my arms and lifted weights and done these things, versus I sat all day. Now I'm going to eat this chicken. You know, my body's would just turn into fat. So anyway, so you want, I like Cliff Bars, like in the 12 pack. You can get oatmeal. If you want to do something cheap, you get oatmeal, like the non-processed oatmeal. But if you want to, you know, do the stuff that already is like pre-made with the sugars and stuff in it, you can do that too. But I wouldn't recommend it. It has a different effect on you. But you get your super processed oatmeal, and you put your nut of choice in there. Walnuts are good because they're fatty, so they'll give you energy. And then some raisins, because it'll give you, it's a simple sugar. And then you can sprinkle a little brown sugar in there, or something like that. And yeah, it's pretty much like a trough bag. So you put it in your little bag, you shake it up, and you just shove it into your mouth. Like you just literally like open your mouth and just shove it into your mouth. And then you slow chew it. Like you the main thing about a carbohydrate, which is interesting, because I remember when I was in college, this is one thing that actually, you know, I carried over from one of my biology courses, was that chewing, the more you chew a carbohydrate, the more it breaks down into a sugar. And the more you break it down into the sugar, the easier it is as a source of energy for your body to absorb, versus your stomach enzymes trying to break that down. So your saliva actually has a huge purpose in breaking down carbohydrates for you, is that it makes it an easier job on your stomach. If it's an easier job on your stomach, you're also not as drained because your stomach isn't working as hard. And boom, you know, it has a ton of positives. Not only that, you don't want to be constipated. So, you know, I talk about being relaxed and being, you know, confident in what you're doing. You feel constipated, you're always wondering, do I need to go, or did I go enough? Those are major problems that's going to distract you from play. Definitely if you're thinking like, oh my gosh, Dark Logos told me to drink all this water, it's the middle of the round, I gotta pee, plus I feel like I gotta take a dump, I don't know what's going on, you're distracted. So there's that. I like I said, I like getting my hummus and my pita chips during lunch if I can get to Target or something. I like that. But I like things that are easy for my body to break down. Now, when all said and done, won't front, you'll see me at Buffalo Wild Wings after a Tulsa Rock sometimes, you know, hanging out with Chip and Laura Cardinal, okay? That's just our routine. Or even after Origins, you'll see me, you know, like there's this cool Greek place down the way, like where my team, we eat at all the time. Like it's just good food. It just is. And if I remember their name, that would be different. That would be great, but I don't. So there's that. You know, after tournament, you can do all that jazz, eat all that junk crap, you know, because you don't have to compete. But during that, you know, during the tournament, you know, I wouldn't recommend that. Okay. You know, next thing I would recommend is in between rounds, just do whatever you need to do to relax. My mental mindset is, since people know me, before the tournament, I'll talk to people. You know, I'll get it all out. You know, like, hey, what's up? What's going on? How you been? How's the wife and kids? How was your trip down here? Did you see what WizKids brought out? Blah, 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 blah. Politics, HC Realms, blah, 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 blah. Where's the quarry, Edward? What's going on with that? And then I tell them what's going on. They're like, dude, you need to put a quarry out. And I'm like, I understand. You know, all these things. But during tournament time, I mean, anybody that knows me at Tulsa or wherever else, I just let them know, like, I'm in player mode, like, don't bug me. Like I'll go off and I'm because of the anxiety of being a coach and being a player. I'm doing like mini Tai Chi to try to lower the anxiety levels. And I mean, I'm not fronting. Like I got an ulcer, like straight up. Like I have to change my diet because of that. But I'm trying to deal with my psychological effects of fear. And so anxiety is a byproduct of fear. Okay. And true to an extent, a defensive player, a majority of the time, their first thought process and development is fear. So I'm trying to develop past that to cognitively look at defense, not reactionally look at defense. They're two different things. But so I'll listen to my music. I'll get my praise and worship on. I find prayer and thanksgiving very useful in between rounds. Win or lose, prayer and thanksgiving are essential for me, myself, as a player. Because I see, and this is just from my theological perspective, is worship is an outflowing of function done properly. And so you can see a great carpenter, shaves and works and makes a great sculpture as an act of worship because they are designed to do that. And so I look at my elegance and play as no less worship than me singing. And so me being able to exercise the fullness of what I'm created to do, which is to be a thinker, an engager, a teacher. I wouldn't just say just a brain, because that's something I've had to pull myself out of as a person. Because I'm not just a brain, I'm not just an information, report repository, but understanding that allows me to be thankful for the great moments in the game, even if I don't win. And that gratefulness allows me to step back and not condemn myself for losses or condemn myself for mistakes, because mistakes happen in games. And so I've found out, like when I drop my persona fatigue of I'm Dark Logos, okay, and fortunately most people don't have to deal with that, but that is a disadvantage when you start becoming the number one player at your venue. Is that I'm the number one player, and if I lose, they'll look bad on me. They'll make fun of me, so I can't lose. That's you putting up a persona. Let that go. So what if they say talk smack? They're weak. They talk smack because they're weak. That's their only way of hurting you. Understand that. Usually when I see people talk smack, it's usually because they're not capable. And I mean, sometimes, yeah, it's like, ha ha ha, I'm gonna get you, but it's if you understand truthfully that they're trying to bring you down, that's because they're weak. And I don't mean that in like, yes, you're strong, they're weak, and use that to keep that frame. But no, just really it's a sign of insecurity and weakness that you can't celebrate someone else being successful or at least good at something. Okay. So anyway, there's persona fatigue, and then there's self-condemnation that kicks in a ton of times with players because things didn't go perfectly, or they were supposed to remember everything and they didn't. Or their opponent got over because of this ruling or that ruling or whatever, and that they should have known. You can't let that weigh you down, because if you let that weigh you down, you're going to have problems. It's energy leeches, and I don't mean like I function my chi and concentrate it and make a Kamehameha blast. No, but I mean like in how your natural body reacts. Is that you'll understand that through that anxiety, through that tightness, you have the stress, and the stress is that your body is in fight or flight mode constantly, that it can't let go. So it drains all that actual energy that can be used for good and other things, for good things, in constant defense mode. And when you're in this constant defense mode, you're trying to mainly protect. Your body is physically reacting to a psychological attack that really doesn't exist. Okay? So you start understanding when you put down that persona fatigue, you put down the self-judging, and then you become present in the moment and enjoy it. And not just like, I'm rushing to be the next world champion. I'm rushing to be the champion of this tournament. I'm rushing to win that LE. I'll feel satisfied when I win that LE. And I'll say this as a successful person. As a person that has a lot of competitive success. I never really brought up my speech and debate history, on this show, because if I can't really show you all of my trophies, because there's heroclix eclipsing it. If I took out all my heroclix, actually, if I just took all my trophies from high school off the shelf and put them on the steps in the house, and I think I did this before, and I only did speech and debate for 3 years in high school, and I did it for technically 2 years in college, and only really got 1 year of solid competition in college. It fills up 4 steps. And I mean, I have no reason to be a sort of front with anybody here. I got 1 state championship from actually I have 2 state championships from high school, and I got multiple state championships from college. And I have national trophies. Okay? I'm telling you as a person that won. I'm telling you from a person that's been on that stage. I'm telling you as a person that's got tons of number 1 trophies. That trophy will not satisfy you. Being the world champion will not satisfy you. Yes, it is an achievement, but I'm going to tell you this 100%. Once you get there, your pride will condemn you if you do anything less than that caliber. And I've talked to multiple world champions, and they're my friends. They're my friends. I can tell you the anxiety that kicks in when that persona fatigue is at its height, that you can't underperform or you can't do bad at a tournament, that if you lose 1 round to some guy, that he's holding it up, that I beat Daniel Jones, I beat George Massue, look at me, I'm by far, by default, by this one moment in the day, and everything went my way, and he was tired and exhausted and had a bad day at work, and had to deal with some crazy news he heard before he got to the tournament, but all that stacked up in the finals, after he slugged through a tougher bracket than I did, I beat George Massue, I beat Daniel Jones, I beat Alex Avila, I beat Dark Logos, I beat. And though that, because that person will raise that little minor victory up that means nothing, then it is used as a weapon to either by others to hit you over the head with, or by yourself to hit yourself over the head with. Trust me, being at the top and winning an achievement will not satisfy you. It has pitfalls that will destroy weak people. That is why I've been telling folks, understand your path to mastery. Go down your route. Become a better player. The focus of this show is for you to become a better player, not for you to be a world champion. Because that stops you so much. That's so limiting. Because here's the thing. Let's just say someone listens to the show, you become a world champion. Great. What's next? What's next? Oh, a lot of y'all haven't thought that far, have you? What's next in your development? What's next in your growth? What's next in your creation process? You know, like the one thing I like about my colleague Wes right now is he's at the end of his 2-year cycle of my development with him. And so I'm having to step back and see, like, okay, like, what do you want to go into? Oh, okay, cool. Here's something I learned from there. But I'm not, I'm not sitting there like, hey, look at this, look at this, look at this. Now come back and look at this. He's not a student anymore. Yes, he learns from things from me. I learn things from him, but he's not a student anymore. He's a colleague. So I have to interact with him like a colleague and not a student. You have to make, I can't be like, let me solve your problems for you, homie. It's like, no, like, okay, you got problems, cool, hit me up. If you need my help, I'll help you out. Okay, so, but most players don't ever get there because they're never thought to get there, because society tells them that the epitome of achievement is that victory. But once you get that victory, you then feel like you have to constantly get victory after victory after victory, or else it makes that one victory that you had in the past a fluke. And so you can start to see, like, hey, Dark Logos, you gave me the good science jazz and the psychological jazz, and you gave me a little bit of Jesus. Okay, cool. So how do I win? And this is the point that I'm more wanting to bring up, is winning comes naturally if you have a good foundation, because over time theory will come. There's enough shows that you can listen to get good heroclix theory. There was a time that wasn't possible. Okay, so even if you listen to my earlier shows, if you listen to my shows before the Quarry, really, if you listen to any of my shows that are 2013 and earlier, okay, 2013 and earlier, you're going to notice that there's a lot more specific looking at particular figures, what they do, why they do what they do. Okay, there's not so much theory. There's not so much what's in your head. There's not so much of, hey, these are the team and metascapes that you're looking at. There's a lot less of that, because the overall theory crafting of heroclix was a lot more narrower. There was a lot less examples. There were a lot less tournaments. There were a lot less people that were seen on top, let alone how many interviews are you going to get. Like, I'm literally one of the first persons that said, like, can I interview a world champion? And it's like, yeah, I just get him on the show and put my phone inside of a cup and shove some paper towels in there to minimize the echo, put my mic really, really close to the phone, and lean in and have back problems for the next hour and a half and talk. Okay? But that was the past. This is now. You already know what's going to be at Origins if you're just sitting around and listen. Like, literally. Like, if you just sit around and listen, either on HC Realms or Facebook or through all the other podcasts, you'll figure out, like, oh, this is going to show up. If you take the time to even look at what's left in the field, you can figure out what's going to show up. Okay? But, and I do emphasize the but, all of those things are fuel for a machine. And if your machine is a 1935 clunker, you're only going to get so much out of it. But if your machine is the freaking Starship Enterprise, you're going, intergalactic. Okay? If your machine's the TARDIS, you're traveling through time. If your machine is, the freaking Death Star, you're blowing up planets, yo. Like I'm hoping that you can get what I'm saying is that all of this theory stuff comes in and helps you understand things, but you still have to manifest you. Okay? If you try to clone me, guess what, homie? I am always ahead of you. Always. Always. And I even encourage everybody, like, go listen to other cats and then come back and listen to me. Why is that? Because by the time you listen to all those other cats and then you come back and listen to me, you're going to have a different perspective. You're going to take different things out than the person that just primarily listens to me. All right? Even if you listen to some other cats, and I'm not calling anybody out because I think most of the folk, really pretty much all the folks that are pretty much on podcasting now are pretty solid. But there's some random cats on YouTube that I look at. I'm like, you don't know what's going on. And this isn't a shot at Mary with Clicks or any other somebody. You know, these are like less known people, like really less known people. I'm like, what the heck? What's up with you all? But really, you're not going to get too much jank. You're really not getting too much jank. You're getting some good stuff. But if you don't understand your own form of Jeet Kune Do and develop your own form of Jeet Kune Do, I'm always going to be Bruce Lee. I'm always going to be Bruce Lee. I'm going to 1-inch punch you so hard that you're not going to know what's happening. And by the time you develop 1-inch punch, I have 1-inch kick. And by the time you develop 1-inch kick, I have anti 1-inch punch and anti 1-inch kick tech. And you understand? So there's a point in time where those steps in mastery of understanding yourself, understanding the game, understanding how you're going to apply those things, understanding elements that you're going to take from the outside world and apply them to game, they have to kick in. The thing that I hate the most is and I'm not going to say it's the casuals because it's really not. It was a particular group of casuals on HC Realms as I wrap up this episode. There were a particular group of casuals that when I brought up the fact that, I studied Art of War and there's this other von Clausewitz, which there was a Jamie Foxx movie and the guy that was freaking Leonidas. I forgot they were in this movie. But Van Clausewitz was mentioned. It's called On War. So I studied those two texts. And I said, I apply them to heroclix. I mean, even so much so, there's a group. I think I'm like the last member of it. Like you can't even become a member of it anymore. It was a Sun Tzu clan on HC Realms. Like I don't even think anybody else can be a member of a Sun Tzu clan. And I forgot how I got. Oh, I got invited because Rock 810 invited me. But I brought that up on HC Realms. And they were like, how dare you actually compare Real War to heroclix? Real War is a lot more serious and there's real stakes on the line. And how dare you do that? That just makes a mockery of war. And, at the time, I was really in a big FU HC Realms mood anyway. And I wrote this whole diatribe about the Golden City, and then they ripped me apart about the Golden City. You can go back and look at that post too. And pretty much I said that we were all living in a Golden City in which we do not understand the technological marvels that are in the Golden City. And we could have had this wonderful time if we worked together, but we're fighting each other. And some of us are tinkering with the Golden City, and then people are making fun of the people that are tinkering with the Golden City, trying to understand the technology in the Golden City that far surpasses the understanding of anybody that's there. But if we work together, we could actually sort of revitalize this Golden City and benefit everyone. And so they made fun of me for that. And what I started to understand years later is the mindset of the average person when they look at the game is that nothing beyond game concepts can be put in games. I can't use any other skill set beyond gaming skill sets in any other facet of my life but games. How dare you bring a faction of my life, which I think is very light, and apply concepts to the game that are very serious or are used in more serious consequences, thus elevating, because I use serious tactics in a game that's not serious, thus elevating games to being serious. That's fool's logic. It's fool's logic. Okay? And here's why. If I have copper and I'm able to, sell the copper and get money, okay? And I have gold and I can sell the gold and get more money, okay? Just because I can sell gold and get money doesn't mean that all of a sudden that I need to get that I have to hop on copper way harder because I can get money for gold, or that I have to work as hard to produce the amount of copper in volume to compensate for the amount of money I would get for just a little bit of gold. You see, like, just because something's more serious doesn't mean that something else loses its category. I'm still getting more money for gold than I am for copper, okay, even though I'm doing an exchange in both. Okay, so it's good for you to apply things from the outside world into heroclix, so that you can become your own master. You can become, not in the sense of ruling your own life sort of mastery type of thing, but in the sense of like in a kung fu sort of way, that your form of kung fu is different than my form of kung fu, and so when we fight, both of our styles of kung fu becomes better. Even with MMA, you can see people take different styles of martial arts and put them together, but they, even though they all know the boxing punch, they all know the jiu-jitsu takedowns, they also know different ways of doing it, and they have different advantages and disadvantages for doing it. So there's that, as well. Like, I always like working with people that are military people, because the idea of command and hierarchy and movement and supply lines and stuff, that comes a little bit easier, and because they've gone through either some form of basic training or some form of basic tactical understanding, let alone whatever their job is. They understand hierarchy and how hierarchy allows people to do stuff. I always like that. I also like working with people that are business people, because they understand the nature of telling people where to go and why, and timings. And I work with casual people too, and depending on their job, there's different things. People that are musicians or dancers have a better understanding of tempo than people that aren't. It all comes in, but when it's amazing. I play a game with those people when they look at heroclix as just a game and they can only use their game knowledge. They'll start bringing up everything from all the past games, whether it's board games or not, into their understanding of playing heroclix. But then when I ask them what their profession is, and when I ask them what they do for a living, or when I ask them whether they like doing other things they like doing as a hobby, and then I start incorporating those thoughts and processes, I make that bridge between their natural cognitive world into this game of heroclix. It's amazing the transformations in play that happens, because all of a sudden the game isn't as difficult. They're not isolating their brain off. They're doing things that are unique to them. And when I critique them on minor things, they're like, oh, okay. And then they go back and make a better version of what they're doing before. And so it's great because I get to see people be them playing versus being a minor clone of Dark Logos. So, I say all that to say this. If you listen to what I'm saying in this episode, you're going to gain a lot in preparation for a tournament. And also, I hope you understand that if you're thinking I prep the week of for a tournament, you're already behind. I get my mental scape together the week of the tournament. You're already behind. Doesn't mean that you're going to win. Doesn't mean you're going to lose. But I'm just saying is you're already behind. Now you're depending on other outside factors to have more dominant roles than they did before. Okay? So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'm working on a bunch of different things right now, and Origins is next up, but I can't look past this weekend because this weekend is Howard Brock's tournament. I will be recording a quarry from Howard's tournament, so there's that. All right. Thanks for listening. I'm really tired. I'm really tired now. You can follow me on Twitter at StartOverPod. It came from outer space and told me, man, sitting in Metron's chair seems awesome until you have to sit in the chair. You can find my random musings on Twitter. You also can find out when a new show is up. You can email me at startingoverpodcast@gmail.com. That's startingoverpodcast@gmail.com. If you wish to opine, keep it piffy, keep it interesting, keep it awesome, baby. Thank you for everyone that's hit me up the last few weeks. I really appreciate it. And if you want to buy a shirt, just click in the description below. You can get a Starting Over Podcast shirt with my lovely face on it. And if you ever see me at Origins or whatever, and you have a permanent marker because I don't carry one, and you want me to sign your shirt, I will do so, just as long as it's appropriate. And then also, it'd be better if you have like the shirt on the side and you're wearing another shirt, so I can sign your shirt. Or, yeah, that just the first one, no or. And that's it. So again, I really hope that this episode was really useful to help people get ready for major tournaments, because I really don't want to just see the same 20, 25, 30 people dominate the ranks of heroclix. I really don't. I don't want people to feel that once someone gets up near the top, that their position is so firmly footed in the ground that no one else can come up and overthrow them outside of a miracle or their super genius. I really don't want that, because that makes us weak. It makes us, the ones at the top, complacent, and the ones at the bottom apathetic. So anyway, thank you for listening, and remember, we all have to start over sometime.